I guess we'll. All right, we are all here, so we have our quorum.
Great.
Everybody have a chance to look at the minutes from last meeting?
Yeah, they're fine as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, comments, questions?
Great job, Carrie. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny, Kate, any questions on the minutes?
Well, this is embarrassing, but I can't find them. I have the notes from that Melissa sent around. I have the agenda, but I never saw the minutes from the last meeting. So I feel like I should abstain from voting on them, but I'm really happy to read them. But I was just searching my email and I couldn't find it anywhere.
They were attached to the,
I can forward.
Email.
Carrie's gonna forward you a copy right now.
Okay, great.
But I think they were in the email with the agenda, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
sent them out twice, once right after you got them and once again when I sent the agenda. The wrong agenda.
That's okay.
Neither here.
The meeting at
That's
5:20.
so funny.
Okay, I sent them.
They're on their way.
Jenny, did you get the minutes?
Jenny's
Um,
haven't changed.
I'm just going through my emails to find them. But I feel like I read them.
The name of the file was Housing Committee 5/21/24 minutes.
I got them.
Okay.
I got agenda.
Yeah, it's attached with that.
I thought. I'm glad.
I only knew I got it because I had to reference back to something about the town meeting. The ordinances.
Yeah.
And so somebody had asked me a question, I was like, I know the answer. And I know we talked about it and was able to go back to the minutes. And I was like, aha. And so. I think that it.
Yeah, so then there were not even any questions. Well, no, that's not true. Becky Snur voiced one
Yeah, nobody was gonna
reservation.
do anything. Because nobody up there was gonna want to subdivide their land.
Right, and she said it might be counterproductive, but I never quite understood how that could be, but.
She was saying that there was, well, hold on. Let's finish this and then we'll talk about
Okay,
that.
okay, let's do
Yeah,
that.
sorry.
You okay, Kate? Okay, so do I hear a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
We have to do it verbally since. we're on
Verbally,
Zoom.
that's right. we're
Roll
on
call.
Zoom, So. Your vote, Kate.
Aye.
Jenny?
I
Aye.
Aye. And that's it. So we are there. Accepted.
Woo, thank you.
All right. Next item was just any final comments relative to the Up Island Town Center, which is now approved and in place.
Great job, everybody.
Thank you.
So that's part of the land use ordinance now.
Yep.
And it does mean that immediately the store property has more attributes than it had before.
Yes.
And as far as I know, the store is still, there's no serious buyers there. So that 17 acres is still sort of.
Yeah.
Jenny, do you have any update about the store?
no updates.
Yeah. So that 17 acres is still quite attractive for some kind of development. If a prospective buyer wants to do that, or if we could assist in that, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, for a prospective buyer, it could help offset costs, so. But,
Yeah, they
Still
could
need-
buy and sell off the acreage.
right,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Richard's
Still
not
need-
interested in dividing assets. He wants it all to
Yeah.
go And then somebody else can deal with it.
Yeah, and I understand his position. I suppose if I were him, I might do the same thing, but I think at the end of the day, even if it could be subdivided, finding a developer or couple of developers could be difficult, but there is always that option because it's good land, so,
Right.
okay.
And going back to what me and Tom were talking about,
Yeah.
the only objection that we heard was potentially from, Becky. The way that I understood it is she was more concerned that there was someone that was south of Keller Point that had no interest in having any kind of density housing,
Right.
and that they would potentially try to buy it in order to
Stop.
ensure that no housing was ever done there. And it was like, well, none of it's for sale
Yeah.
anyways. And so,
Yeah, and she didn't name names, but I think she was referring to that lot that, the Brigham's own, and I have actually had informal conversations with them about putting in some affordable housing there.
right,
So that will be an ongoing conversation
right.
that I can
But-
try to pursue.
With the town ordinance, it clearly
Mhm.
Now we have
now
an
opens
opportunity.
Open the door.
the door, so. I'm happy to see that finally done. I'm sure you are after how many years?
Well, that was, the original plan
Right.
6 years ago, so
Right.
I'm happy that this is now
Yeah.
come to fruition. We'll see if it actually makes a difference.
Okay. All right, well, again,
Even
that,
if it's not immediate, the fact that it is there and the opportunity to is huge
Yeah,
and stuff.
so, and, the Mid-Island, if you would, town center with its expansion, obviously, IAP is taking immediate advantage of that, so.
yeah, that added these two properties back
Right.
here.
So that's good. Okay, so, again, Tom, thanks for doing all that work.
It feels good to have it done.
All right, next item is the, MCOG Housing Working Group, which kind of has disappeared. I don't know what to say. The MCOG has been kind of absent from the process for the last 3 weeks. They failed to set up the second meeting. So I've got calls into a couple of people, but I have not heard back. So something might be going on there. I'm not sure about.
There is something next Thursday. They sent out a plea to the select board, that I think Shay forwarded to you, because they wanted a representative from Islesboro for the MCOG housing.
Oh,
And so I
Do you
am
have-
supposed to be asking you if you would like to come with me. They want 2 representatives.
when is it?
July 27th from 11 to 2:30 at the Rockland City Court.
Huh, okay.
Wait,
Yes.
June or July, Missa?
June, next Thursday?
Oh, yeah, I think you said July.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm available.
Cool. And so, because we figured that we'd go down and at least see what it's gonna be. I'll
Yeah.
forward you the info that I have on it.
So, yeah, so, but you said in Rockland,
Mhm.
because the group that I attended the last meeting, that there was supposed to be a second meeting, was a Waldo County group,
Right.
which is obviously not Rockland, so I'm a little confused there.
It might not be a housing specific,
But
meeting. Does MCOG do other things
Yes.
too? Okay,
yeah, they
They were-
have a fairly broad, yeah, if you look at their website, they have a fairly broad agenda.
For Susan's sake, would you just give her a little background what this group is?
Oh, MCOG is the Mid-Coast Council of Governments, and it covers, well, the housing group that I attended was for Waldo County. It covers much more than Waldo. It's Waldo, Lincoln, Knox, I think, and forget exactly how far it goes. They had done a study at the end of last year. We had a presentation from them in December, and it kind of focused on, I'll just say socioeconomic issues relative to housing. And so they created a housing working group to study it, and the group was really focused on Waldo County. They had one meeting, which was more of a meet and greet. That was fairly large. I want to say there were at least 24 people. There, a couple of us were on Zoom because it was an evening meeting, but many of them were in person. And they covered everything from select board members of various communities to realtors to, chambers of commerce and, all sorts of different things. I think that, one of the more interesting issues that brought up came mostly from the realtor group, and Ginny, you may want. There were about 5 people who were in the real estate business, and they said, almost universally that about 80% of the sales that they were seeing were all cash sales, which pretty much drives out the people that we're concerned about, the workforce folks out of contention. Ginny, you weren't at the last meeting, but do you have, is that the kind of thing you're seeing?
I would say that people are getting more creative with 7% interest rates. We're still seeing, I would say last year with the high interest rates, we saw a lot of like the baby boomers on the move, and they could cash out on their properties and right size. And they were making strides over millennials for sure, first time home buyers. And then the younger generations that were trying to move, maybe they were borrowing from mom and dad to sort of bridge those gaps and make sense of, 7% isn't fun, but it's also not awful. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing people get creative.
Okay. Creativity is good. I mean, one of the, and I don't remember precisely who was talking about a younger couple. They had just had a closing that day, and that entire office was celebrating because it was somebody, if you would, in that particular group who would be a target for being able to secure housing. But anyway,
I would say for me, it's been 50-50,
okay.
but it's been out-of-staters coming in with a mortgage. Or yeah, and then another situation, it was a loan, but it was creatively done. So,
Okay.
or 2 of them were creatively done, I would say. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said.
Well, yeah, I know just from personal experience within my family, my, 2 of my kids are having trouble finding, or actually winning bids is probably more like it. Every time they go in for one, they think they're being aggressive and they find out they're being outbid, either in conditions or money, one or the other. So it is kind of tough for the workforce segment, I will say that. So anyway, I will continue to press on this particular group to see where they're going. I'm not sure exactly what's happened, but we'll go do that. And if you would forward me that.
And I was wrong, it's not just housing, it's the General Assembly meeting, Carrie was right. I automatically related it to housing because it's Addie Filson.
Yeah,
And she was saying, since Michael's already working with our housing work group, we would like him to come as he'd be a great fit for the second representative.
I will.
And so I apologize.
I will do it, and that'll give me a chance to corner her personally as to
Yes.
where this other meeting is. So
Perfect.
it's the 27th
Yeah,
in Rockland.
I'm sending you the info right now.
Okay. What time did you say?
11 to 2:30.
Okay. And we can go over together, and I assume that's
If you scroll for the registrations right there,
Okay.
and then they send you all the info.
everything.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any other questions on that one?
We will find.
Okay. So, the next topic on the agenda really is what are our next steps? Where do we go from here? And, one of the things that hit me was, in the latest Island News was an IAP update, which I thought was absolutely fabulous. And so, Kate, Barbara, the Schnur Cottage issue was brought up, and for those who didn't see it, it's, you were had a program, I guess I'll call it, for what you call Schnur Cottage, which is on the land just adjacent to, I guess, just down the road here,
Mhm.
up to 7 homes.
Yes, we're not set on 7. I think the first step is to finish the 2 that are underway, which will be 3-bedroom houses, standalone houses. And then on the other part of the property, we'll begin with potentially 2 duplexes, each of which will be 2-bedroom, 1-bath units. So there'll be 4 more units added. And the 7 is aspirational, sort of depends on fundraising and other regulations and potentially the availability of money from the state, but we're not ready to apply for that right now. And it's not clear what's going to be forthcoming from the state. So the plan now is for 2 duplexes.
Okay,
So there'll be 6 units coming on in the next couple of years, 2 or 3 years.
that's fabulous. Are the 2 duplexes going to be, I guess, funded with probably a series of different fundraising efforts, but is the state gonna be one of those funders?
It's not clear that the state will be involved. It may be all private fundraising at this point. Because there is no state money available immediately, and what is rumored to be available was coming up in August or shortly thereafter, and those projects have to be shovel-ready to compete for them, and we are not shovel-ready for the additional units yet. So we're working on it, and we're working on estimates and so on, and we have some plans that we're potentially going to develop. I sent them to Tommy. I think he has them, but they are working plans at this point.
Right.
Fabulous. In the past, one of the things Rick had talked about was when the state came up with funding, when they came up with a program that included funding,
Mhm.
that they identified the islands with some kind of guarantee, and guarantee may be too strong of a word, but some kind of guarantee that the islands would get a certain amount of money.
Yes, as far as I know, there is nothing designated specifically for the islands coming up that we know for sure about. This is a rural program, and we
Okay.
qualify as rural, and so could come in under that rubric. But
Yeah,
nothing
exact-
specific.
Yeah, the island funding specifically was all allocated a few years ago, and the rural affordable housing funding has a minimum of 5 units. And so we're
Right.
looking into sort of what would be the things that we could tweak to meet those criteria. But being ready for that application in August when the funds are ready is a high bar. And this is new, but the state is looking at a projected $250 million deficit in the state budget next biennium, after having a few years now of having, surpluses of about that size. And so it is certainly in our interest to find ways to move forward, to use the funds that have been allocated, if we can, just because we don't know if those will be allocated in the next budget.
Okay. Thank you. So obviously, after reading that and listening to what you were saying, I want to make sure that we don't, with what this group does and what you're doing is we're not in conflict somehow. I mean, especially if you go mostly private with the new program, which is, if anything that we would do, it would end up being focused more on private. I want to make sure that we're not competing, if you would. Because I would hate, you know, I mean, you've got a program that you've already started to put together and you've got, you know, obviously some plans, and I would hate to see that derailed because we might be looking at something else.
I don't think there'll be any conflict approach wise. I mean, you're gonna go after some private funding and possibly state or federal money. You know, this group would like to encourage commercial development. And so those initial efforts wouldn't conflict at all. The only point of possible conflict would be if we are competing for the same audience of homeowners. But none of us quite know how large that audience is and how much demand there is. So I am also encouraged that you've got these plans ahead of you. Barbara, I did want to just follow up one other question. The two original beginning houses back here, has all that funding, I know there was some difficulty about the state monies coming through. Has that been resolved or?
No, it has not been totally resolved. There have been barriers constantly being put up with new details that the state keeps asking for. It's very different from the previous state funding that we got, which was very straightforward. And they keep finding new and additional things, and they want new estimates because it's been so long from the estimate from the builders. And so we're trying to get to closing before the end of June, but it's been very frustrating. And there've been numerous discussions and meetings, and the lawyer for the state has been rather rigid about all this. Keeps adding. So the short answer is no, we're not there yet. And it's pretty frustrating because this is building season. We'd like to get going.
Yeah, I mean, and you can't really start the construction till all the financing is in
You
place.
cannot. They will not permit it.
Well, good luck. Good luck to all of that, both the two original units and the two duplexes. And I do see the plan that you sent me at about 4 o'clock. I hadn't even sent it, and I will share it with the group here. And yeah, I think we as a group still have some field of action where we could encourage commercial development. And I hope that you will feel free to speak up if you feel like we are impeding your progress in any way, because that's not our intent.
Well, keep me posted on what you're doing. I
Okay,
think it's important that we keep talking.
okay.
Okay, so that basically leaves us into what are our next steps, and I know that those are off you know, the tip of your tongue, but we've been focused very much on the town center, and now that that's a done deal, we really need to move on to what our next step is gonna be.
I have, of all the things we've talked about in the last few months, the things that I thought that a municipal body could do to have some impact is if we could come up with some sort of ordinance that gives a stimulus, an impetus to a commercial developer to build affordable housing. And maybe not under the formal, you know, definition of affordable housing that would apply for grant money or anything. But if we stick with the idea about workforce housing, is there any way that we could change our property tax structure to give a break to someone that was going to build a house or 2 houses or 4 houses, with some sort of covenant on it that it would be a year-round dwelling?
Right,
Is that?
very interesting. I think it's something to for sure look into. And as you guys know, the select board just switched, and next week will be, our town attorneys have changed. And we did vote on approving the new one. And in their interviews and stuff, they had a lot of different experience
Mhm.
in land use ordinances or ordinances in generals, covenances. And so I think it'd be something very interesting. We need to, if we could look and see if there's another one like Hancock County, but they're my favorite. I just partial to them. They work a lot with the state of Maine and they're very developed. I like my unicorn. But the Hancock County Housing, their whole website's just amazing. But we could definitely look in there. I think it'd be something worth investigating for sure.
And Kate, do you have any experience with something like this?
Not in terms of tax structure. Most of the incentives that I've seen have been much more related to zoning and land use. So similar to the kinds of incentives that were included in the 2003 package, rather than municipal tax breaks. There are sometimes sort of particular, sometimes they're geographically designated, so you can say sort of within this certain zone, you'll get a particular tax incentive. And but I feel like that's typically used more for commercial development and business attraction rather than for affordable housing development. So no, it's not something I've worked on, but I'm curious about it. And I would want us to make sure that we're setting up something that in the long term really works in terms of the tax base. We don't want to do anything that undermines our long-term tax base, but yeah, absolutely. Especially if it has some of that long-term sort of permanent affordability qualities that we were talking about in terms of other structures too.
And making sure that there's not a way that you can build the house, move into it so it's year round, and now you can rent yours, your primary or your former home for Airbnb it and defeat the purpose.
Well, I guess the first thing we would do is to just poke around a little bit and see if someone else has done this before.
Yeah, see what we can come up with.
And like you say, maybe the new town lawyer would already have some experience about this. That would be wonderful.
I told her we were gonna be best friends. She just didn't believe me.
Would you, as a select board member, reach out and
Yeah, I can,
query them?
that will be after July 1st. And then they're using that week to kind of get established and familiar with everybody. And so, but I can have Janet set up a Q&A of, do you know of any of the other places that have this? But I'll draft the email, run it through you guys, make sure I'm wording it correctly before.
Okay, all right.
Missa,
Right.
do we have to think about like, that we have to come up with the funds to cover the attorney's time for questions and things that we have, or are they just on retainer and we don't have to worry about like the housing committee paying for their time?
We don't have a budget, so they can't charge us. And so that's what we give it to Janet and Janet kind of kicks it to them as as you can kind of thing. That way they can, it's not, hey, do a whole bunch of research into this, as just the vague question of, also, do you think you could point me in a direction of?
Yeah.
So that's why we just kind of skate through.
Yeah.
Janet asks a serious question and slides mine in underneath, so. That's how we work with no money.
Okay, good.
But hopefully I can get an answer for that before next meeting in July, August, what are we thinking? No, let's finish this first.
Yeah, let's finish this. Are there any other incentives that anybody knows? Incentives to build workforce housing? And I realize as everything is written, you read the newspapers, everything is written. Workforce housing seems to be another name applied to affordable housing.
Right.
I think where we've used it is our view of workforce housing has really been for the workforce. Which means there's an element of affordability in there, but it doesn't mean it's all, quote unquote, affordable housing. There's
That's right. It doesn't fit that
Right.
legal definition or the financial parameters.
Right,
And as we've said before, generally, we need to attract plumbers and carpenters
and
and
electricians.
whatnot, that
Teachers.
they come here and they get a full workload, they're gonna make $75,000 or $100,000 a year, but they can't come here unless there's a house for them.
Right.
Right.
So again, are there any other incentives that anybody is aware of to a developer, if you would? That we can kind of think through and put together? Other than money under the table, so,
There are a couple, I don't know if, and I did a quick Google, and there is an affordable housing tax increment financing structure that Maine Housing oversees for municipalities. I haven't read the details of it, but it does exist, and that was just, so I can find out more. Also, there's some interesting things where municipalities are offering really low cost or no cost construction loans. So that it's basically a revolving fund, so
Mhm.
that the public puts up, so the money for part of the construction cost, and then they get paid back with a very low interest rate. And so that's a different way of approaching, and then they have sort of a stake in the ownership at the end. So that's another one that exists, but I think typically that happens under a much greater scale than, 2 or 4 units. It typically happens in much larger buildings, but I don't know if it means, I don't know enough about housing finance to know if it's something you could do at, at a smaller scale like ours. And then there was something else. It's an incentive that came to mind when you were asking. Oh, just land donations. So making use of municipally owned land or acquiring land and then having that be donated by the town. Those are the ones I'm aware of. I'm sure that there are others. There's lots of really creative things happening out there.
Yeah, the first idea you have is somewhat the model that IESC has been using. We have a pool of money and then we turn around and loan it out, not for housing, because that's not part of our bailiwick, but for small business loans to help perpetuate the local economy. So if we were to do, to follow up on that first idea, then we would have to sort of get our act together and then go to the select board and ask them to put on a town warrant to establish something like a reserve fund, but it would be just a pool of money that could then be offered, as you say, for low cost or no cost home building projects. And that sounds good to me, because then the select board themselves would be the gatekeepers to that money, and it would certainly be extended only to someone that they, we could write some definitions, someone that was going to be a year-round part of the workforce. That would be lovely.
Do you think that the sustainability committee would have any interest in having a new branch off of theirs? Because I know that you guys do it mainly solely for businesses and business expansion, but if there's nobody to be in the businesses, then there's no more expansion. So what about if they were willing? Because you already have the structure, you already have the work, the flow to it. Because the problem, I don't see that the select board, it would be something that then this committee would have to take on. And we would basically become the ICS, the Sustainable Housing Committee. That, which is a whole different ball of wax that kind of just made my stomach hurt. But if the Sustainability Committee had a little branch off of it, because you were already established with banks, you're already established with funds. Like, I'm not trying to, I am trying to push,
Sure,
but.
but that's okay. Here's
I'll volunteer to be on the board, it'll
my
be
immediate
fine.
reaction is that ISC went through a 1-2 year fundraising
Right.
and raised a significant amount of money, but with the upfront goal, as I just stated, to support local businesses. And we also overtly stated during that fundraising time that we would not usurp the responsibilities of any other town organizations. IAP, for instance.
Gotcha, okay.
So we've gone through this conversation with many different people in different ways about
Right.
housing loans, and we've always said, no, that's not part of our
Okay.
agenda.
I'm really curious how much the interest rates or the interest payments on construction loans are a barrier for development. Like, I don't know just how, I don't know the financing layers enough to know sort of how much that would be an incentive for someone to develop a affordable versus market rate housing. And I wonder if it might be something that if we are looking at sort of a broader definition of affordable and sort of thinking about it as workforce, if that, like if it's a tool to really develop more like regular person housing on the island, as opposed, that's not considered sort of quote unquote affordable with a bunch of, like if it's just increasing the housing supply on the island in general, or,
Right.
you know, if it is enough of a financial incentive to also help drive affordable housing development. I don't know, but there's a new,
She know about that. She knows how onerous, 8-9% long-term mortgage is compared to a 2% loan, which is what IESC extends now. And Jenny, would that be a motivator to have someone actually build a new home?
Lower interest rates?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, it always helps. Yeah, if somebody could, if you could apply, you know, there's like VA loans and FHA loans, and if there was some sort of workforce loan that was a lower interest rate, I'm sure it'd be very appealing.
Jenny, what's a VA loan?
A veteran,
Yeah,
like,
What's the rate?
right, yeah.
I don't know the rate off the top of my head, but it's 0% down is one of the attractive things about a VA loan.
But it's a lower rate than a standard bank, conventional mortgage, correct?
Right, and then your VA, yeah, then your conventional loan,
Couple of points less,
right?
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's gonna depend on who, what, where, and how, but yeah.
Right. And rates are today 6.5 to 7.
Yeah, they're, you know, you keep hearing that they're just under 7. I haven't seen the rate sheet for that yet, but,
Okay. Yeah,
I mean, that's another way to think about it, not in terms of like a construction loan revolving fund for helping to develop housing, but what kinds of ways can the town sort of provide support for first-time home buyers or other things? Like there could be local funding that we might use for that purpose as well. I wonder, I've got a couple of folks that I can ask some questions of if I come to our next meeting with more information about sort of what level of subsidy could be created by sort of doing a low-cost construction loan fund typically. Like, how does that tend to work? And is there a scale at which it works better or type of development for which it works better? I could do some of that research before our next meeting and just bring some more information.
great. And if you could find out if there is any municipality, in our state that is doing this presently and how it works, that'd be great.
Yeah, the only one I know of right now is a county in Maryland. But they're getting a lot of attention for it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't also municipalities in Maine doing it. I will look into it.
Okay. So there are a couple items that we can start to focus on. As a next step, so that's good. All right, any other input on that particular item? Okay, any comments? Chance?
Very interesting. I think I'd like to be on the committee if that is possible.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We would love to have you. We
Yeah.
need another leader.
Yep, we are down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll make 6.
I have a learning curve on this, that I'm extremely concerned about.
And we know Owen and everything,
For work.
so you can join too.
I'm just listening.
Okay, well, great, welcome. And, you know, we will, I will write to the select board, let them know that you have been named to the committee, and it will be done. They'll put you on the official rolls and send you a bill probably, but who knows?
And we don't have to go through a written ballot.
Yeah, we could do this one very quick.
No, I was approved for the library board, it was nothing,
Good, thank you.
and that was free,
Yeah,
I didn't have to pay much.
all right, well, great, that's good news.
And
All
I'll-
right,
I'll probably wanna pick your brain, Tommy.
We're all sort of finding our way through a thicket that we don't really know much about. Kate's got some experience and she's been very helpful. But yeah, we're all learning as we go here.
All right, so I'm asking the new town attorney about tax incentives for affordable and workforce housing structures and building.
all right,
Good.
Yes.
and Kate will undertake her piece of it, and we can get back on it, and hopefully if we can address Patty next week, we can find out what's going on
Yeah.
with their housing.
You get it from the left, I get it from the right, we got this.
Yeah,
Kate, you asked last meeting if IAP paid taxes.
I did?
Somebody did. Somebody asked if IAP was still paying property taxes, and the answer is yes.
And you know, that's at some sort of reduced rate.
I have no information about anything, but when I was sitting there going through the tax booklet, noticing that I missed 1 year's payment, 1/2 of 1 year's payment, I was like, how am I the one on here? And then I was like, ooh, let me look and see. And sure enough, all of IAP's houses are listed with that they're paid, they're good, but I don't know if they're
Okay.
reduced or anything, but we should remind them
I'll
to.
just borrow that.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I do my homework.
all right,
I turn in late, but I do it.
okay, if there are no more comments, next thing is, when do we want to meet again? July has always been a bad month to try to do something. And I know that work, for me, it's a bad month.
I can do July 25th.
And I can't,
Okay.
July.
And you guys don't need me.
I have a bazillion people in at the end of July.
I can do July 25th.
Well, actually, I can't do July 25th. They don't arrive until the 26th.
But, with the things that we're looking into,
Would it be
would it be more prudent to go through, fine, we can do our discussions through email with the information that we found, and we can have a
something? for-
larger, more collective meeting in August.
Yeah, that's-
I don't know what anybody's preference is.
How does the end of August look for everybody?
Still okay for me.
Other than the 22nd, I'm okay.
Do
Yeah.
you wanna go back to Tuesdays or do you like Thursdays?
Tuesdays were working just fine until they didn't. So
I can go back to Tuesdays.
Tuesdays, so the 20th,
Okay.
What if we split the difference? The only reason I'm suggesting that is like do something in like the first half of August, so it's not quite as long. Only just because when I have things I'm supposed to deliver, having a deadline is helpful.
Right.
So I'll be more on it if we meet sooner rather than later.
13th of August work.
No,
There's an energy committee
No.
meeting on the 13th. And so if we moved it to 4 and we're out of here by 5,
On the 13th.
is that,
it's possible.
or after 7:15?
Yeah.
Which I would prefer no.
Or the 14th or 15th, or that'd be Wednesday,
Oh, yeah.
Thursday.
I can't do Wednesday that week, but I might be able to do Thursday.
Thursday has Health Center Advisory Board from 3 to 4. We're still good.
So 5 on the 15th of
All
August.
right, that sounds good to me.
Carrie, does that look okay?
Yep.
All right.
But
Ginny,
also,
this-
if folks want to meet at the end of August, that was just one opinion. Don't feel like you've got
No,
to
I
move
think
it
that's
up.
good.
That sounds good.
So 8:15 at 5 PM. Ginny, does that work for you?
We'll find out. I'll try to make it work. We'll put it on the calendar.
If it doesn't, Ginny, then we can, I'm good.
Oh,
That's,
I don't know what's happening in 2 months.
Jenny's like me. We have no idea what our plans are until somebody tells us what our plan is, and then it changes because somebody else told us a new plan.
I remembered this meeting all the way up until about 15 minutes before, but my phone told me 10 minutes before, so here I am.
There you go.
All right,
Fantastic.
okay. Then that is set. We have our assignment, homework assignment. Any other conversation with anybody? So do I hear a movement to adjourn?
Moved.
Did I have the assignment?
Yes.
Second, anybody? Okay. We need a second. I'll second.
Hold on.
All right,
Let's go.
all,
I.
Kate, Jenny?
I.
Aye. Done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Stay nice and
Thank
cool.
Have a
Yes,
good one.
nice to see everyone.
Good to see you. We didn't get to see you.